think it would be remiss of me not to say a few words on tonight's breaking news, which is the Iranian drone attacks on Israel. Clearly, it's an escalation in the region. Um, as it stands, this has been going on for a few hours. I'm just going to show you, I sort of put the TV on mute. The BBC has ongoing coverage there, as has CNN, Al Jazeera. So it's tonight's big breaking news. The latest is there are no casualties, except one child may have been injured, and there's mild damage to a military base. But other than that, no significant damage or casualties, which says something about the effectiveness of Israel's defense systems. Iran was threatening this since the Israeli strike on the Iranian Consulate in Damascus at the beginning of this month. Now, some people commenting on this are already sort of defending Iran and saying that they're retaliating. There's no justification for an attack on a consulate. That attack was deadly. It killed 16 people, including some senior Iranian generals connected to the Revolutionary Guard. I believe 2 civilians were also killed, which is always awful. But it isn't without context. Now, before I say a little bit more here, um, I am not uncritical of Israel. I don't come into this like a sort of blind supporter of Israel. But there is a difference with Israel taking on clearly a military target in Iran's Revolutionary Guard versus some of the more dubious things, for example, West Bank settlers have been doing. There is also a context in the fact that Iran has been funding terrorist groups like Hezbollah, which have been sending rockets into Israel. So this is not something that just came out of nowhere. It's not like Israel just decided they were going to attack the Iranians in Damascus out of the blue. There was a context there. Hezbollah has been attacking Israel, not very successfully. There's been some casualties, but not very successfully. Um, and it gets back to this old argument about Israel's right to defend itself. Now, I know a lot of um, Israel critics say that's always an excuse used for Israel, but what is Israel supposed to do in this context? Is it supposed to allow Iran to simply continue funding terrorist groups that attack it? And the thing about this is the Iranian regime is not acting in the interests of the Iranian people. Um, I think most young Iranians who have experience of being tortured, beaten, imprisoned, many of them killed, remember in the 2022 protests, um, the Iranian regime acts only for the Iranian regime. I think it is the biggest destabilizing force in the Middle East by far. And that's not to be uncritical of Israel or Saudi Arabia or the United States or Britain in the region, but I think by far Iran is the biggest destabilizing force because it continues to fund terror groups across the region. Um, the other destabilizing force in the region is the endemic human rights abuses by autocratic regimes, which of course led to the Arabian Spring, which then morphed into the Arabian Winter. That's for a longer video, just showing footage of Netanyahu on the phone to Biden. Big factor in all of this is that Britain and America has supported Israel. The RAF has apparently been in there. Is that the right thing to do? I'm not sure. Biden's spoken about his ironclad support for Israel. Um, I just hope this doesn't escalate because Israel's going to respond. They have to be seen to be responding. Where's this all going to lead? Will it be a major regional escalation? Will it be something else? It's good that there's no casualties in Israel, but how is Israel going to respond? And then if there's civilian casualties in the Israeli response, that's just going to escalate things. So it's like this constant, it's like a Cold War, actually not a Cold War, a hot war between Iran and Israel. Tonight's events are quite distinctive, even by Middle East standards. I understand that whilst Iran's been funding various groups against Israel, this is one of the first, if not the first, direct attempted attack, 100 drones. One child's supposed to have been wounded and there's mild damage to an airbase, so it's had relatively little impact. Um, I just don't know where this is going to go, but that's tonight's breaking news. Um, Egypt's call for de-escalation, that seems sensible. Um, I think everyone should be calling for de-escalation, so I'm not 100% sure that Britain and America should really be fully backing Israel, militarily speaking. Is that in our national interest? I'm not sure. I think we could condemn Iran for its funding of terrorist activity in the region because it unquestionably is. The other significant thing here is it's often perceived as the Israeli Arab conflict, but it's not that countries in the region are great fans of the Iranian regime either. You know, Israel may not be popular, but Iran hasn't exactly made itself many friends either with its foreign policy. I think I think the Iranian regime is a toxic influence in the region, and if you have any doubts about the moral high ground, look at the way it treats its own people. I mean, that to me says a lot. Um, Most Iranians don't want a war with Israel. Most Israelis probably don't want a war with Iran. This is something that Tehran is pushing. It needs to stop funding the likes of Hezbollah and Hamas. Um, so, whilst I'm not uncritical of some of the things Israel's done, I'm very critical of the civilian death toll in Gaza. I'm very critical of the attack on aid convoys, although Israel's admitted it's promised an investigation. I'm not uncritical of Israel, but when it comes to Iran, unquestionably, Iran has posed a consistent threat to Israel. And you know, this isn't like hot air. This is something that the Iranian regime constantly publicly announces. It talks about Israel as a Zionist entity. Iran has made it very clear it views Israel as enemy number one. Um, so I think it's unquestionably something that Iran has escalated.